Hey guys, today we're going to talk about snatching, and most specifically snatching for the beginner or novice type athlete. That being said, an athlete that wants to see themselves progress not just physically and athletically, but most specifically in the sport of CrossFit. So this video is not to say that everybody needs to be snatching, or if you're somebody that's just interested in losing weight or getting as fit as possible or living a long, healthy life, that you need to absolutely snatch. That's obviously not the case, and snatching is definitely better served for some people than others, depending on what your life function is, what your goal is inside of the gym. So this video is not to say that everybody absolutely needs to be snatching. This video is for the people that want to be snatching because of their fitness goals, whether that be in or outside of the competitive side of CrossFit or the competitive side of functional fitness. And they don't know really where to start, and they don't know where there might be some issues, and they don't really know what their next step is. So what we've done is we've created a 10-tier rubric, a 10-tier scale that athletes can progress themselves or with their coach from level 1 through level 10. Now, I said this is a beginner and novice scale because level 10 actually, once you clear this scale, which is 100% body weight snatch for males and 90% body weight snatch for females, you're actually going to progress yourself onto another scale that we have for a more competitive, well-refined athlete that is going to be using standards and numbers that don't have so much to do with your body weight and more to do with what we believe competitive athletes, male and female, need to have at different levels of competition. So with this first grading rubric, this beginner or novice grading rubric, the majority of things are based off of your own body weight. And the reason why we did that is to start to get a relative idea for what some progressions could look like, not as far as exercise selection, but goals, and just making sure that we're progressing within our goals, and it kind of keeps us honest. So level 1, can you or your athlete or whoever you're having this conversation with put an empty bar over your head with proper shoulder positioning, with proper scapular positioning, extended elbows, triceps are active. Those of you guys that have been in CrossFit gyms or in functional fitness gyms long enough, we've all seen somebody put an empty bar overhead. Not even talking about squat snatching or overhead squatting yet, and the position looks kind of like this. So if we put an empty bar over your head, if we power snatch an empty bar, we're not talking about squat snatching yet, and the bar is here, we definitely have some mobility concerns. Probably something shoulder related. We're going to have to dig in deeper, and there can be some separate assessments that go on as far as shoulder mobility and trying to assess what issues there might be, assuming that there's not any like extracurricular things like I have a dislocated shoulder or a slap tear, whatever that might be. Is it a bar positioning issue? So sometimes shitty overhead positioning can be disguised as mobility issues, but the athlete or yourself might just not know where the bar needs to go. Have we found that sweet spot? Two things on top of the mobility work that might work out and might help this athlete progress onto level 2 would be some behind the neck work potentially. We're going to have to be careful of that depending on what the mobility restrictions are. And probably some overhead carries just to try to strengthen that position and try to get our triceps and our lats and our scaps understanding what pressing is really supposed to feel like. So level 2, the athlete has shown us that he or she can get the bar overhead and be active with the bar. Level 2 is going to now go into some squat range of motion. Can the athlete perform 5 overhead squats with an empty bar at the tempo of 3-2x1? Just as a reminder, when we read tempo, 3-2x1 is going to be 3 seconds on the descent, 2-second pause at the bottom. X is going to stand for explode up, and then 1 second pause at the top. So can this athlete or can you perform 5 safe, efficient overhead squats, hitting all the things that we need to hit with overhead squats? Again, my elbows are going to stay fully extended. I'm going to stay active into the bar. I'm going to keep my weight in my heels. My hips are going to track behind where they need to go. My knees are going to be over my toes. All the things that we look for when we're squatting. Can we do that with no pain and no tightness with an empty bar? If the answer is no, we're starting to probably be able to dial into where the mobility issue might be. So if the athlete progressed from level 1 and they showed us that they have the proper shoulder mobility to receive the bar in a snatch grip overhead, but they failed at level 2, we can probably start to dial in the fact that it might be ankle or hip mobility, and then we can go through some screening processes with that. And if at any point in this video that you're like, that's me, I've done this, or I just did that, that's me, and I don't know what type of screening processes I should be going through because I don't have a coach, and you're not local here in CrossFit at CrossFit Boynton Beach, feel free to hit me up on Instagram or hit us up, CrossFit Boynton Beach on Instagram or Black Sheep Training on Instagram, and we can give you some resources as to how we can go through some assessments and some screening protocols. So the athlete demonstrated that they can perform 5 overhead squats with an empty bar at the tempo required, with no pain, no tightness, full depth, the whole 9 yards. We're staying active on the bar. We're progressing now into level 3. Level 3 is going to be, can we squat snatch with an empty bar? So the athlete's shown that they have overhead mobility to a degree and to a certain load, and we'll talk about that later in the progression or later in the hierarchy, how we might outgrow our mobility. Or out-strengthen our mobility, I guess I should say. Can the athlete squat snatch an empty bar? If the answer is no, is it positional work? Is it the skill moving under the bar? Or is it potentially just repetition and we don't have enough exposure to the movement yet? And it could be any one of those things. Chances are, if they've already passed this very, very basic level mobility screening, like on the field screening for the overhead position, can we get there? And then the overhead squat. If they're failing in this level 3 and they're not able to progress from level 3 to level 4, but they progress from level 2 to level 3, chances are it's not a mobility issue unless it's an internal rotation issue, which is making it so that the bar just can't stay tight to the body. And that's a serious possibility. Generally speaking, with an empty bar, if all other things are mobile, that won't stop an athlete from being able to progress into level 4 from level 3. So generally speaking, it's something skill related. So this would be where your coach or you would potentially video you and see if there's maybe a misunderstanding about what some positions might look like, what extension's supposed to look like. Are you comfortable going under the bar? And at this level, and I say the comfort thing and I say the repetition thing, because at this level, you will get a lot of really, really green lifters that, again, have past mobility stuff, and they get to this level and they just haven't done enough squat snatches yet. So this empty bar squat snatch is actually a very challenging thing for them, even though they might be looking like they're moving well, because they just don't have enough repetition. And this starts to get into that category of like, a personal pet peeve of mine is that every single lift and every single thing needs this overcoaching analysis. And sometimes that was really good, you just need to do more reps of it. And I'm not going to overcoach you, and your coach shouldn't overcoach you, and you shouldn't try to overcoach yourself. As long as all things are good and consistent, the issue might be comfort. So if the answer is no, we can't squat snatch an empty bar, we need to dig a little bit deeper. Are the positionings correct? Am I understanding the movement? And if those two things are true, I might just need to get more reps in, which is fine, and that's a good problem to have. Moving on to level number 4, and we'll start to pick the pace up a little bit as we go here, is where we start to get into some of our body weight standards. Can males squat snatch 60% of their body weight? Can females squat snatch 50% of their body weight? This whole gradient is obviously assuming that this is a healthy human being that is not necessarily overweight, because if the athlete's overweight, then there needs to be concerns as far as getting that into play also, while we can also be working on this squat snatch stuff. But to pretend like just because we're overweight, we can't worry about that and this at the same time doesn't need to be a thing. So two things can be true at once. Two things can have to have focus at once. So 60% for males, 50% for females. If an athlete is failing at this, and for the next couple levels actually, there's going to have to be some analyzation from a coach present or a coach online, whether it's a technique a technical issue, a strength issue, because now we are loading the bar, or potentially a mobility issue that's actually re-exposed themselves that wasn't exposed with an empty bar that's now able to be exposed because we have some weight on the bar. And it could be literally any of these things. But when you start to dial into what the problem is, and if you're working, by yourself on this and you're just setting up a camera and watching, if your positions are right and it's a strength issue, what should I be doing? This is me. What should I be doing to get better and progress past this level? I need to be doing some positional strength work, probably, maybe some pulls, maybe some overhead squats, maybe some behind the neck, whatever it might be, depending on where in the lift I feel like my strength issue is occurring. If it's a technical issue, again, you're going to have to dial into wherever that technical component is happening. When we start to get to this level, I'm not a huge fan, because this is still a fairly new lifter, I'm not a huge fan of very, very high skill level accessory exercises like a snatch balance. This athlete probably still doesn't have a great understanding about what a true snatch should look like. So teaching this athlete a snatch balance, I'm not a huge fan of. But if this is a little bit more seasoned of an athlete that does need very, 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 very specific, accessory exercises, then a snatch balance could be beneficial. I'm just not a huge fan of that at this level. Generally speaking, faults at this level can be fixed with doing portions of the lift, but actually continuing to snatch and not just doing like snatch balances. Moving on, the athletes show that male athletes show that they can snatch 60% of body weight, females 50% of body weight. Level 5, that increases by 15%. So we have males at 75%, females at 65%. Now, if the athlete cannot progress from level 5 to level 6, we're going to go through the similar assessment needed that we did from level 4 to level 5 to see if maybe the weight increase, maybe that percentage increase that's required to continue to move on in the scale, exposed, again, a mobility concern that needs to be addressed or screened, or a strength issue that needs to be addressed and tackled with some program design as far as some positional strength work. Or there might be a technical issue that at the previous requirement of 60% for males, 50% for females was not limiting enough to be failing lifts that now it is, and now that issue needs to be addressed from a technical perspective. Moving on to level 6, we start to get into some snatch battery stuff. And the reason why we put snatch battery work in here is I've worked with a lot of people in the past that get so worked up and so obsessed with this huge snatch. They turn into these like dive, I call them dive bombers, these dive bombers that just like throw the bar and they're really, really fast. Usually this athlete's a little bit skinnier, a little bit smaller, but might be a little bit quicker. They just throw the bar overhead, dive under the bar, pray for dear life. They have a completion rate of like 60% of their snatches. They fail a bunch of lightweight because there's no technical consistency, and they kind of get away with murder sometimes, and they end up having these like fairly decent snatches that if we were only concerned with how much you snatch but not any type of battery or consistency, they might progress through the scale but not actually be a good snatcher. So that's why we kind of put this battery in here. So level 6 is going to be, can the athlete perform for males 60% of their body weight, females 50% of their body weight, 20 reps, 1 rep every 30 seconds with no misses. Is this possible? Can they do it? If they're not able to do it, chances are, because we saw the decrease in load, it's going to be a battery issue. That might be a battery issue from we'll call it like a physiological perspective. Like, I need energy system training to get my snatch battery or my CP battery more efficient. Or it could be just a consistency issue as far as every lift needs to look the same. And if we look at good weightlifters, not just good Olympic-style weightlifters that are like high-level Olympians, but also good CrossFitters and even mid-range CrossFitters, at a percentage like this, every rep should look the same. It should be really, really chill. It should be really, really easy. On the absolute outliers of this part of the assessment. There might be an aerobic limiter where maybe I'm very consistent, but maybe I'm just really deconditioned, where if I'm asked to do 20 reps, 1 rep every 30 seconds with no misses, my heart rate gets jacked up. If that's the case, then there does need to be some concerns about the deconditioned state of that athlete that needs to be addressed also, to make sure that they are working on their fitness, because this is, even though this is a snatch progression and a snatch hierarchy, it's a snatch hierarchy in functional fitness, which is why I brought up the body weight thing in a previous section of the hierarchy, and why I'm bringing up an aerobic capacity thing, or potentially a battery thing. So it could kind of be killing multiple birds with one stone. Moving on past that, males 90% snatch, females 80% snatch. That's level 7. Level 9 is going to be 100% body weight for males, 90% body weight for females. If at any point in time in this hierarchy or in this progression, this level progression, you're not able to continue because the new requirement is asking for more weight on the bar, the same assessment can be gone through. Did I expose a mobility concern? Have I exposed a strength issue? Or is there a technical issue that needs to be concerned? Because more weights on the bar, something might have been exposed. So that's important that you continue to touch back up on that and figure out why you're not progressing. If it's a mobility concern that stopped me from progressing from level 6 to level 7 to get that 90% body weight snatch, it might not be a mobility concern that's going to stop me from level 8 to level 9. I might have addressed that concern. Now it might be a strength issue. It might be specifically a hinging strength issue if the bar is heavy off the floor, or if my hips are shooting up way too fast relative to my shoulder height or my shoulder speed. So that's something that constantly needs to be touched on. So level 7 to level 8. Level 7 is 90% body weight snatch for males, 80% for females. Level 8 is, can this athlete or you perform 7 unbroken touch and go snatches at 75% body weight for males and 65% for females. Again, this is just adding that like mixed modality component of CrossFit into it. As we're progressing and as we're getting better at snatching, I want to make sure that we're continuing to touch on lighter percentage work, not just to show that you're consistent in lifts under no fatigue and percentage work, but also because if the goal is to get better at CrossFit and you now snatch 205, but in workouts that call for 135, you're trash, then we didn't really do our job as far as progressing your snatch, truly. If there's an issue at level 8 and we're not able to make 7 unbroken touch-and-go snatch at 75% for males, 65% for females. And mind you, we're talking all squat snatches on this, with the exception of level 1. All squat snatches. We're not talking power snatches. We're talking about full squat snatches. That goes for the battery test that is performed at level 6, and that goes for the 7 unbroken touch-and-go snatches that are performed at level 8. It could be a battery problem. It could be a skill-specific touch-and-go problem. So that's something that you or your coach would have to address to figure out why it is that you're progressing nicely as far as your one rep max is concerned, but why you're not able to move sub-maximal loads the way you should be able to relative to what your one rep max is. Level 9 is going to be, like we talked about, a body weight snatch for males, a 90% body weight snatch for females. And then at level 10, we're actually going to be putting our athletes through a very, very popular tester in the field of CrossFit, in the field of functional fitness, which is 20 squat snatches for time at 77% of their one rep max. No longer of their body weight, but of their one rep max. And then once they are at level 9, we can start to have conversations about what the other scale would look like and progressing on a scale that is a little bit more competitive, and it's a little bit more hingent on other people's data and what data of elite athletes and good athletes and professional athletes and amateur athletes in the sport of CrossFit currently have and will have in order to be successful in CrossFit. So I hope this video was helpful for you. We're going to put a link to this downloadable spreadsheet spreadsheet for all 10 levels. You can kind of go through it yourself. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to one of the CrossFit Boynton Beach or Black Sheep training coaches.